In some ways. But hey, we got one more outstanding interview. My guy, Nate Edwards from Rock M Nation to preview this Mizzou Georgia matchup. Cannot wait for this one. All right, so hey, one of our favorites back on the show, Nate Edwards from Rock M Nation. And hey, we were just talking off air today. I mean, what a season it's been. And the best could be yet to come here this weekend, traveling down to what used to be number one. Apparently, I guess it's number two, according to the playoff committee. But the Missouri Tigers, what's just the reaction from your fan base? I can only imagine how elated they are with this season up to this point.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're 7-1. We're 12th in the college football playoff ranking. We beaten Kansas State. We hung with LSU. Beat the heck out of Kentucky and South Carolina. We're doing great. I mean, we're doing so well that we're arguing with each other on social media about whether we should go to the Tennessee game or go deer hunting instead. So like we're in a really good spot, and it's a special season. They don't come around all that often in Columbia, Missouri. This is easily the biggest game in 9 years since Missouri took the field against Alabama in the 2014 SEC championship game. And there's a lot of tension, a lot of anxiety, but a lot of excitement, and we're ready to play, man. We're ready to play.
Yeah, so obviously I want to talk some Georgia here with you, but before we get to that, Nate, I'm just curious, what's the bigger surprise let's go just with you here, Brady Cook and his emergence, or Cody Sherrer in his emergence, he's second in the SEC right now in rushing yards?
I mean, it's really both, but like if you asked me, I would say it's Cody Sherrer. And it's because we spent all of last year assuming that something was wrong with Brady Cook. I know the worst of Mizzou fan base is like, well, this is all he's ever going to be, just, a Brad Smith runner with a pop gun of an arm. And so it was like, all right, well, I mean, at least he's got that, right? At least he's got something that he's really good at. And Cody Sherrer last year was just like, man, he needs so much blocking. He doesn't really create. If he does get out in the open, he's the slowest dude on the field. Like it was a great story and we loved him. It's just, you always wanted like, okay, so who's the next guy up? And I will be the first to admit, I felt that all of last year. And I've even still felt that at times at the beginning of this year. That dude, I don't know what's in him. He is built like a bowling ball. He is 5'9". He is 220 pounds, and he just does not stop. And now that he's got not the best offensive line in the world, but a better one that can run block a little bit better than last year, all of a sudden he's creating, he's grinding, he's thumping. Then he breaks one for 36 out of nowhere, and then he does it again. And I did not see that coming from Cody Sherrer when he committed as a walk-on from Truman State as a transfer. Did not ever imagine him leading at any point in the SEC in the rushing yards or even being in the top 10. And here he is, proving me wrong. Pride of Lutheran South and St. Louis. He's been great.
Yeah. Well, also, I think you could argue Eli Drinkwitz has been pretty great himself. Is he, I mean, you may be a little biased, but, I like having you on because you are not like just this crazy Mizzou homer by any means. But, I mean, is there any other candidate for SEC Coach of the Year than Eli at this point? I know some people make the argument for Kirby Smart. I don't get that one at all. But to me, at this point, it's Eli and no one else.
Yeah, I mean, I know I got the logo on, but I do like to think I'm a rational thinker here. Here's the difference. What does SEC Coach of the Year mean to you, just the royal you? And ask yourself while you're listening to this, what does that mean? Is it being the best, having the best team? Does it mean winning the championship? Does it mean doing more with less? And for me, now I'm a Mizzou fan, I always feel like the Coach of the Year should be the guy who's doing more with less or had nothing expected of him and his team. And they go out and prove all the doubters wrong. That to me would be a Coach of the Year candidate. And I know that there's a couple of voices out there who think that Kirby Smart should be SEC Coach of the Year, National Coach of the Year, and it's a crime that he's not been national, but he's a great coach. He's got all the hardware. He's winning national championships, and he doesn't need another one. Tell me about Eli Drinkwitz, who came in to a team that had been scuffling for, two straight years with underwhelming recruiting under Barry Odom. And it takes him a while, but he through the transfer portal, builds up some starters, through the high school recruiting, builds up some depth, adds key pieces, recognizes his faults, brings in an OC, finds a DC who shares his vision. Like, this is what a coach of the year does. Comes out of seemingly nowhere, builds something that's impressive that shouldn't be there, and then unleashes it and is in the running in November. That to me is a coach of the year. And to me, yes, it should be Eli Drinkwitz this year.
Yeah. Well, all right. So let's shift gears to the game this weekend. I'm sure you've seen it. There's optimism among the Mizzou fan base, but that's the only place I'm seeing it. I mean, everybody's just looked at Georgia. They beat Florida, and for some reason we're crowning them for beating a team that may finish fifth in the East. I'm not ready to go that far, but what's the optimism, do you think, just in that locker room, that they can go down to Athens and beat the Georgia Bulldogs after being pretty much the only team that came close to doing it last year, at least in the regular season?
Yeah. So I for your listeners, I don't know how much you all monitor in Missouri space. I'm just going to assume 0, and that's fine. Every coach has got their gimmicky saying, their thing that they thump their chest on. This year has been STP, something to prove. And that's, during the fall, during August camp, you're like, all right, I guess that's what it's going to be this year. It's always some kind of motivational thing, but they seem to have really bought into it. This team, even with the transfers coming in and some of the newer guys, it's like, no, we are Missouri. No one ever expects us to do anything. We are good. We are really good. And we need people to understand that we are good. So we're going to go out there and prove it. And that is pretty consistent messaging from, interviews throughout the week to after the game, to the coaches, to the players. They're always saying, we got something to prove. We got something to prove. And so that optimism in the locker room is that this quiet confidence that they are better than anyone else thinks they are, and are going to go out there and prove it. The optimism with the fan base, which is much less rational, is look at 2013 when Missouri went to Athens in the 5th game of the year and beat a Georgia team that was good, but one of the worst records of the Mark Richt era, and maybe the most injuries of the Mark Richt era, and one of the worst defenses of this millennium that Georgia's ever put out. And again, they almost still beat Missouri on the at home. So that is where some of that optimism comes from. I'm not saying that I'm super optimistic here. I think Missouri can absolutely give them a game. I think because of last year, Georgia is very much prepared to shut Missouri down as soon as possible. They have faced what I would consider 2 real tests this year in Kentucky and Florida and just squashed them the second the game started. I went back and did the math in a piece today. The last time Georgia lost a regular season game was the 2020 COVID year. And the last time they lost a regular season game against a division or conference opponent was that weird 2019 loss to South Carolina team that went 4-8 out of nowhere. It doesn't happen. It just does not happen. And my friend Brandon Kiley on RockYMNation.com wrote about how many times Mizzou has upset the AP number 1 or the AP number 1 on the road, which again has never happened. So this is a long way of saying that Kirby Smart's overdue for a loss and Mizzou's overdue for a win. And even though the numbers don't point to it, that's what we're grasping at.
Is it safe to say that Luther Burton will be? I mean, Georgia's loaded. I'm not trying to. I mean, we all know, but at least when he's on the field, is he the best, most dynamic player, you think, or do you think Georgia has someone that can match Luther Burton?
I mean, we've seen Luther Burton against what I'd call, blue chip, elite secondaries, and he went up against LSU, and he did fine. He did really well in the first half, and then kind of got swallowed up by Harold Perkins in the second half. But you're looking at Georgia's starting secondary anyway, with Kamari Lassiter, Malachi Starks, Dalen Everett. Like, these dudes are good. They're young, but they're really good. Do I think Luther can get his yards? Yes, I do think he can. Is he going to be the game breaker receiver? Boy, Mike, fingers crossed. I hope he is. It's a Kirby Smart defense. We all know it. We all hate it, except for you Georgia fans. Like, it's smart. It's aggressive. It doesn't make mistakes. And even if they do, it's not the same mistake twice. this is going to have to be Luther Burton's going to have a game, but so is Theo Weiss, so is Mookie Cooper, so is Cody Sherrer. Like, we need Luther to have his game, and then everyone else have a game too. Because anything less than an A+ effort from any of those guys means Missouri loses.
And how confident are you that the Mizzou offensive line can hold up? Because that was the critical to last week's just thrashing of the Gators. I mean, they had a nice opening drive, and that was about it because their offensive line could not hold up. Now, I think Missouri's offensive line is better than Florida's, but where do you stand on that?
Yeah, and Missouri's offensive line is better than it was last year, too, both in run blocking and pass blocking. I would say, just as a general blanket statement, that no offensive line is going to hold up against Georgia's defensive front. That's just easy money to say that. I will say, though, that Brady Cook is one of the fastest at getting rid of the ball when passing, and so he's done a good job of negating any potential weaknesses in a pass rush just by getting it out quickly, usually to Mookie Cooper, sometimes to Luther. So there is that. If there is a weakness, Brady's been pretty good at getting rid of it to avoid that big loss. The other thing, the offensive line as a whole is not the best run blocking unit in the country, but the left side of the line is pretty good at run blocking. And for the most part, when Cody Sherrer's gotten a big gain, it has been behind Xavier Delgado, the left guard, and Javon Foster, the left tackle. So I don't think you got to, last year, I think we had 110 yards and 60 of that came from Cody Sherrer's big run. You don't need, you need to feed the threat and just be there. And Cody Sherrer is good at avoiding negative yards, but you just need a handful of big plays. And if they're running left, maybe that might be the big chance to negate some of that advantage. But of course, Kirby Smart knows that already and is probably scheming to take it away. So what do I know? I think they can do well, but they're certainly not going to be able to beat Georgia's defensive front.
Well, I always find it annoying when we go into these games and it's Brady Cook versus Carson Beck because, obviously they're never on the field at the same time. So, but considering the defenses, respective defenses they'll be facing, who do you have more confidence in to have a better game on Saturday, Brady Cook or Carson Beck, who seemingly is heating up, even though his most dynamic playmaker Brock Bowers is inactive?
Yeah, I'm not going to cry for Carson Beck. He's taking stats behind one of the best offensive lines in the country and throwing to a fleet of 4- and 5-star guys. Like, you're doing great, man. You are. He's young and this is his first go around through an SEC schedule, and I think he's doing very, very well. Brady Cook's done this before. He's seen Georgia before. He's seen most of these teams before. When I had an optimistic take of Mizzou to start the season, it was because, they returned almost everybody when the rest of the SEC didn't, but also they returned the oldest quarterback with multiple years of experience at his school in the SEC. Spencer Rattler was obviously the oldest with 2 years, but he was the most experienced. He's done this before. And I know that Georgia's gone against a defense like Missouri's. Kentucky's is right there with Missouri and as far as SP plus goes. We're not going to talk about how many points Georgia scored against that Kentucky defense. I know it was a lot, but point is, Brady Cook has seen this before. Carson Beck has seen it once, and every other defense he's played has been very malleable. So I don't know. Again, grasping at straws here. I'm looking for just the smallest of holes for like the best team in the nation, and I think there could be a little bit of a shock when he sees how aggressive Missouri can be, how competent they can be. As long as Missouri's making their tackles, they can be pretty good at stopping you too. So I think that might be the one thing I could point to doubt Carson Beck, and that's why it makes me, of course, noted Mizzou homer, think that Brady Cook is better prepared for this game than Carson Beck is.
What's the recipe for Mizzou to go on the road and pull off this? What would be a massive is probably too strong a word, but let's not kid ourselves. They're an underdog for a reason. What's it going to take if you could engineer an upset here for Missouri? How does that happen?
Yeah. 17 points is a big deal, especially in a conference game. So it'd be a very big upset. So Mizzou needs to do what they're comfortable with, what they like to do. And that's going to lead to an A+ effort, which I said you need an A+ effort to beat Georgia, and then you got to hope that they show up with like a B+ or an A-. So what does that look like on offense? That is big plays, big plays. This has turned very quickly and quietly turned from an efficiency-based ground and pound attack for 3 years into a chuck it deep and run when the holes are there kind of offense. They are at their most comfortable and at their most lethal when they are generating big plays. That's stuff downfield, but it's also screens that turn into 14, 15, 25 sort of yards. And then, the occasional big run from Cody Sherrer on the left. So that's what the offense needs to do. Yes, they're going to get blown up a couple times. Maybe they might not connect, but if they are threatening with big plays, that's when they're most comfortable. They're most lethal. On defense, Blake Baker, at all of his stops has always been kind of this havoc-y, sack, disruption type of DC. And this year he hasn't really had that same type of havoc just because he doesn't have the pass rush that he would like to have. So for most of the year, it's been just like kind of this amoeba competent off defense. And like sometimes they've had really bad tackling days and it's been a rough defensive day, but that havoc's starting to come back. Chris Abrams-Draine is picking off passes, and this Rakestraw is knocking them away. You're seeing a little bit more pressure, a little bit more sacks. Now, granted, South Carolina and Kentucky aren't the best competition. I understand that, but you're starting to see that come back. If Missouri can get that havoc, swatting away passes, tackles at or before the line, sacks, that sort of thing, that's when they are really chugging, and that's when you're putting an efficiency-based attack like Georgia behind the chains and forcing them to be one-dimensional. Not that that one dimension is bad, mind you, but it makes it a little bit easier to defend. So if they can get that pressure, get that havoc going, that's when Mizzou's defense is at its best, it's most comfortable, best chance of beating Georgia's offense.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, moment of truth. What's your prediction for this game? And I'm not putting this out till Thursday, so I don't want to ruin your official prediction or anything like that. But have you made a who's winning this game?
I wish I was more confident in this game. There's no piece of evidence that I can look at that says, yeah, Missouri's got this. Now, I think Missouri can absolutely hang. I think they can absolutely scare the heck out of them for 3-4 quarters. And that's what you're really looking for. Get it to the last, 5 minutes and hope that something breaks your way. And at the end of the day, though, I'm going to say they have like a 24%, 25% chance of pulling off the upset. I think the most likely outcome is probably something like Georgia 35, Missouri 21, something like that. And maybe, the dam breaks in the fourth quarter and a couple of turnovers go wrong for Mizzou and Georgia kind of pads the lead and then just kind of sits on them for the back 10. So that's kind of what I feel like the most realistic, most probable outcome is. In my tiny little Missouri fandom, heart of hearts, I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's going to be like 42-38. It's going to be great. But if I was a betting man, I'd say, yeah, probably like 35-21, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I keep hearing all these dogs, Nate. They say, Mizzou's not faced a defense like this, which is true because Georgia's that elite. But I would say it's just as true that Georgia's defense has not seen an offense like this. So strength on strength. Can't wait for this matchup. Really appreciate your time. Before you go, can you tell my audience where can they follow you and where can they find your work?
For sure. Yeah. So rockmnation.com, everything Missouri football and Missouri basketball, now that that's starting back up. But obviously I just cover the football. You can follow me at Twitter. I'm at Nate G. Edwards. I am on the Blue Sky, also at Nate G. Edwards. I am on Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you want to go, Nate G. Edwards. It's all basically the same there. You can also find us on podcasting. We are Rock M Radio under the Rock M Nation podcasting outlet. My show is called Before the Box Score. We talk about football all the time, a lot more during the season, of course, the off season too. And just come check out the website. Hey, you might be a South Carolina fan and hate my guts. You might be a Kentucky fan and still be sour about a couple of weeks ago. We try to be reasonable. We try to be nice people. If you come over, we like to talk about tailgating recipes and talk about how great it is to visit all the other SEC cities. So it's a great place. You can find me there. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, it's my go-to Missouri podcast. So I can't thank you enough, and can't wait to talk to you again.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. MIZ.
All right, so just want to say thanks, Nate, for joining the show. T-Bob, double whammy here.
Absolutely.
Great episode here. hopefully I can fix what I screwed up before. But any closing thoughts before we get out of here?
No, man. This was again. It's bittersweet. You know. I know. It's getting to the end. We're in November, and you guys know what that means. But it also means that we're up against some like pivotal matchups.
Yeah.
And it's like this weekend is going to break some fan bases, and it's going to make some. You know, and I've been part of a championship run, 1998. I'll keep reliving it, but if you're a part of that run, you look back in games like this weekend and say, well, man, if we were this close, you know, or if this didn't go our way, we never would have got to this game. So that's what I love about it. We're kind of funneling it in, and it's serious football time, brother.
Yeah, they remember what you do in November.
Absolutely.
And a lot of fan bases are going to be remembered this weekend.
Absolutely.
You know what?
Well said.
All right.